There is a cruel and inevitable law within the psyche. The emotions and truths you refuse to face will not die. They will disguise themselves and rule your life from the shadows. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He warned that what you don't bring into consciousness will direct your life, and you will call it fate. In the case of men and women, this unconscious law takes the form of projection, a psychological possession where a man does not see a woman for who she is, but for who he needs her to be. You think you're falling in love, but you're falling into your own wound. You think she is the answer, but she is the mirror. And that mirror, if you refuse to look into it, will destroy you. Jung's dark truth is not an attack on women, it's a wake-up call to men. Most of what we call love is a projection of the anima, the inner feminine within every man. When you are unconscious of her power, she takes over. She doesn't live within you, she possesses you. And suddenly, every woman you meet becomes a screen on which your unmet longing plays itself out. She's the one. She understands me. She's not like the others. You don't see her. You see your own soul, unlived and forgotten, wearing her face. This illusion feels romantic, divine. It has the weight of destiny and the pull of obsession. But that's what makes it dangerous. You are not in love with her. You are in love with the part of yourself you haven't reclaimed. And the more unconscious you are, the more you will call this psychological dependency, passion. This is the trap, and most men walk into it smiling. They do not realize they are haunted by the feminine they've never integrated. They call it chemistry. They call it attraction. But they are simply projecting everything they fear, everything they desire, and everything they've denied onto a woman who, one day, cannot possibly carry that burden. And when she fails to complete him, when she withdraws, disappoints, or resists, his soul breaks. Not because she left, but because the illusion collapsed. The fantasy died, and with it, the part of him that was trying to live through her. This is not about blame, this is about consciousness. It's not about avoiding women, it's about withdrawing the fantasy. It's not about closing your heart, it's about seeing clearly. Because if you don't, you will continue to orbit the feminine like a lost planet waiting to be rescued, waiting to be named, waiting to be crowned as enough. But no woman, no matter how divine, can give you back the part of you that you've abandoned. That work is yours. Jung's message was not moral. It was existential. You will either make the unconscious conscious, or you will suffer its consequences. You will either see her clearly or be ruled by what you project onto her. There is no third path. And so the question becomes, will you keep chasing the woman who reflects your unlived life? Or will you descend into your own soul and claim it? If you do not face your own depths, every woman you meet will become your mirror, and one day, the reflection will shatter. The unconscious contract, when your anima owns you. There is an invisible contract written in the shadows of your mind. You didn't sign it consciously, but you follow it. Every time you feel an irresistible pull toward a woman who mirrors your deepest longing, you're honoring that contract. It says, I will abandon myself if you promise to make me whole. But here's the tragedy. She never signed it. This is how projection works. The anima, your inner feminine, when left unrecognized, doesn't disappear. She whispers through fantasy. She hijacks your desire. And worst of all, she convinces you that the woman in front of you is your salvation, when, in fact, she is only your reflection. You meet her, she's radiant, magnetic, mysterious. You feel seen, understood, desired. It's intoxicating, but what's actually happening is this. Your soul has been starving, and she's feeding it, or so it seems. In truth, it's not about her. It's about what she represents, your own repressed depth, intuition, softness, and soulfulness, qualities you haven't yet claimed as yours. And so, without knowing it, you kneel. Not in devotion, but in dependency. Not in love, but in longing. You silence your truth to avoid rejection. You abandon your mission to maintain connection. You give up your sovereignty to stay close. And every time you do, the anima smiles not out of malice, but because you've let her run the show. You are no longer a man with direction. You are a boy with an addiction. This is why, when she pulls away, it feels like death. You're not losing her, you're losing the illusion she carried. The deeper pain isn't her absence. It's the unbearable echo of your own unlived self, screaming for your attention. This loop doesn't end by finding the right woman. It ends when you break the contract, when you stop outsourcing your soul, when you stop needing her to be the home you haven't built within. Carl Jung warned, "The anima is a guide to the soul, but she must be integrated, not worshipped. If you let her remain unconscious, she becomes the seductress, the chaos, the muse who torments more than she inspires. But when brought into awareness, she becomes your depth, your intuition, your emotional intelligence, the very traits you've been chasing in women." Here's the truth. She is not your savior. She is your symbol. And until you recognize that, you will keep confusing projection for passion. You'll keep mistaking chaos for chemistry. You'll keep calling anxiety love. You'll keep losing yourself just to feel alive. But there's another path, and it begins with a question. What part of me am I giving away, hoping she'll give it back? When you can sit in that question without flinching, without blaming, you begin to reclaim the parts of you that no woman can ever return. That's when the contract starts to burn. That's when you stop being ruled by the anima and start integrating her. It won't feel poetic, it will feel like grief. Grief for the years you spent mistaking women for salvation. Grief for the power you gave away in the name of being loved. Grief for the self you never chose. But on the other side of that grief is a man no longer seduced by his projections. A man who no longer begs to be crowned whole. A man who chooses a woman not to complete him, but to walk beside him. When your soul is unclaimed, you will keep seeking it in her eyes. But when you own it, you become the man who no longer chases, but attracts. The shadow in her eyes. Why you keep attracting the same woman. You swear she's different every time. New voice, new smile, new story. But the ending always feels eerily familiar. One moment, she's warm, magnetic, full of light. The next, cold, distant, and punishing. She wants you close, but only on her terms. She pulls you in, only to push you away. You blame timing, circumstance, even yourself. But here's the brutal truth Jung laid bare. It's not about her, it's about you. When the anima is unintegrated, you don't fall for women, you fall into patterns. You meet the same woman again and again, just in different bodies. She doesn't possess a unique magic. She reflects the part of your soul. You've disowned the fire you won't hold, the chaos you won't claim, the mother wound you won't face. And the attraction, it's not random, it's a psychic loop. Jung called it a repeating complex, a wound that never healed, acting like a magnet under your skin. You don't chase her because she's right. You chase her because she feels familiar, not to your heart, to your trauma. Why do you overlook the red flags? Because part of you wants the pain. You've confused chaos with chemistry. You've mistaken emotional volatility for depth. You've been trained to believe that intensity equals intimacy. So, what happens? You show up with love, she tests it. You set boundaries, she withdraws. You step back, she returns, tears in her eyes. And like a moth, you fly straight into the same flame. Not because you're weak, but because your psyche is trying to resolve something unfinished. You weren't loved rightly, so you keep recreating the wound, hoping this time it will end differently. It never does. This is the anima's trap. She doesn't just make you fall in love, she makes you fall back into old patterns, into unconscious longings, into the role of the boy who just wants to be chosen. But the truth is sobering. You were never chasing her. You were chasing your own reflection. Until you recognize this, even the healthiest woman will seem boring. You'll overlook the woman who brings calm because your nervous system was trained to call turbulence love. You'll run from clarity because you've only ever known confusion. This is why your life can't change until you change the blueprint, until you stop chasing the woman who mirrors your wound and start seeking the woman who respects your healing. And that starts with facing your shadow. Carl Jung said, "What you do not make conscious will be lived out as fate." If you don't own your anima, she will own you. She will choose your lovers. She will write your love stories. She will define your identity through the gaze of women who barely know themselves. But when you stop running, when you ask, why do I need her to complete me? What am I trying to fix in me by fixing her? That's when the mirror shatters. That's when the pattern breaks. You'll feel grief, deep grief, not because she left, but because you finally see who you've been, a man in love with his own ghost. But here's the miracle. You can write a new story, one rooted in truth, one where you don't need her chaos to feel alive, one where calm no longer feels empty, but sacred, one where you no longer mistake your reflection for your destiny. You don't have to keep attracting her. You don't have to keep reenacting him, the wounded boy. You can become the man who sees clearly and chooses consciously, until you meet the woman who mirrors your healing, not your wound. You haven't truly loved. The anima's grip, why you mistake projection for love. You think you love her, you'd swear it. Your heart races, your thoughts spiral, your body aches with need. She feels like destiny, but Jung would urge you to pause, not to shame your feelings, but to see through them, because most men aren't falling in love with her. They're falling into projection. It begins subtly, a glance, a touch, a sense of she gets me. But beneath that euphoria is a deep psychic confusion. You're not seeing her clearly. You're seeing a figure your unconscious mind has long been searching for. Not a woman, a symbol, a healer, a redeemer, a goddess cloaked in human skin. This is the anima at work, she whispers. She will save you. And in your desperation, you listen. You ignore red flags, silence your intuition, and sacrifice your boundaries, not because she demands it, but because a hidden part of you believes you'll die if she leaves. That's not love. That's dependency dressed as devotion. Jung called this a form of possession. Your psyche, starved for wholeness, casts the image of your lost self onto the body of a woman. The intensity of this illusion feels so overwhelming, so real, that you confuse it for truth. But it's just a mirror, and the moment reality cracks the illusion, everything collapses. She says something that doesn't align with the fantasy. She pulls back. She shows flaws. Suddenly, the enchantment fades, and with it, your sense of self. You don't just lose her, you lose the version of you that existed only in her presence. That's how powerful projection is. And the more you idealize her, the more you abandon yourself. You trade silence for attention. You offer comfort instead of clarity. You become the man you think she wants, and in doing so, lose the man you truly are. This is the anima's grip. She makes you believe that love lives in the eyes of a woman, not the soul of a man. She teaches you to chase approval instead of embody truth. And until you reclaim her not in flesh, but in spirit, you'll keep assigning your soul to someone else. But this isn't a condemnation, it's a call to consciousness. Because when you withdraw the projection, when you stop outsourcing your longing and sit in the quiet ache of your own soul, something miraculous happens. You begin to see her not as a savior, but as a person. You begin to see yourself not as a seeker, but as a source. And for the first time, love becomes possible. Not a fantasy, not a performance, but a meeting of two whole beings. No pedestal, no obsession, just presence, Jung said. The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. But projection is not reaction, it's imitation. It transforms nothing, it only deepens the trance. So the next time you feel overwhelmed by love, ask yourself, am I seeing her or my anima? Am I drawn to her clarity or to the mystery I haven't made peace with in myself? Because the woman you can't stop thinking about may not be real. She may be the mirror your unconscious uses to reach you, and the only way to love her truly is to stop needing her to reflect you, to stop seeing in her the light you haven't dared to kindle within. This is the work. Withdraw the projection, reclaim your fire, see her as human. She isn't your salvation, you are. Her silence, his collapse. When withdrawal exposes the wound, there's a silence that breaks men not because it's loud, but because it echoes every abandonment they've never resolved. When she pulls away, doesn't text back, grows cold, the anima-driven man doesn't just feel rejected, he feels erased, as if his very identity was suspended in her gaze. And now that it's gone, so is he. But Jung would say this pain isn't about her, it's about what she represented. Her absence doesn't create your collapse, it reveals it. It exposes the emptiness you've been avoiding, the part of you still waiting to be saved by the feminine. This is the psychic trap. A woman validates you, and you feel alive. She goes silent, and you feel like dying. That isn't love, it's a trauma loop. You're not grieving a relationship, you're grieving the parts of yourself you never learned to hold. Because most men weren't taught to build their worth from within. They were trained to perform, to please, to be chosen. Their emotional survival depended on being good enough for someone else's approval. Usually a mother, a teacher, an early crush who became the prototype for all future longing. So when a woman withdraws, it doesn't feel like distance, it feels like punishment, like shame, like the confirmation of an ancient fear. You are not enough. And this is where the anima, your inner feminine, becomes tyrannical. Not because she's evil, but because she's unclaimed. She doesn't speak through inner wisdom, but through addiction to reflection. And when that mirror disappears, you crash. But this crash is sacred if you're willing to see it that way. Because silence isn't just absence, it's opportunity. It's the space where projection dies and presence can be born. It's the terrain where the boy who begged becomes the man who builds. If her silence destroys you, it's because you haven't learned how to sit with your own. You haven't integrated the anima, the longing, the chaos, the need to be seen, and so you keep casting it onto women, hoping they'll complete the work you've postponed. Jung called this archetypal possession. It's when an inner force hijacks your clarity and turns you into a servant of unconscious desire. And in modern dating, it looks like chasing validation, mistaking anxiety for chemistry, and collapsing every time she pulls away. But what if you didn't collapse? What if you welcomed the withdrawal as a test not of your worth, but of your sovereignty? A woman's silence should never define you. If anything, it should refine you, remind you that you are not here to orbit her moods, but to anchor your truth, that your emotional stability cannot be outsourced, it must be forged. This is the path of individuation. It begins the moment you stop asking, why did she leave, and start asking, what part of me did I abandon by needing her so much? It deepens the moment you choose solitude over desperation, clarity over chaos, because the anima doesn't integrate through romance. She integrates through recognition, and her silence is the mirror, forcing you to meet yourself. This is not weakness, this is initiation. Jung said, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. So let her silence be the alarm clock. Let the space she leaves behind become the sacred ground where your true self emerges. You don't need to chase. You need to return not to her, but to you. Her silence isn't rejection. It's redirection back to your soul. You were never loving her. You were searching for you. Here's the truth that shatters most men. You never truly loved her. You loved the part of you that came alive in her presence. That's the haunting beauty of projection. It feels real spiritual even, like fate. But beneath that electricity is a psychological pattern. You're not falling for a woman, you're falling into your unconscious. Her mystery equals your confusion. Her warmth equals your longing. Her power equals the parts of your own masculine fire you've yet to own. Carl Jung warned us the anima, if unrecognized, becomes an enchantress. She seduces not with her body, but with what she reflects. She holds up the mirror, and you believe it's magic. You see her confidence and call it love. But what you're really worshiping is your disowned potential. This is why the pain cuts so deeply when she leaves. You're not just losing her, you're losing the version of yourself she allowed you to feel. A version you couldn't access alone. You were borrowing your own soul through her smile. But here's where the unconscious plays its cruelest trick. Because the very traits you project onto her beauty depth, salvation are yours. They belong to you, but because you haven't claimed them, you assign them to her. You inflate her into a goddess, and then feel betrayed when she fails to live up to the myth. She wasn't a goddess, she was a human, and you weren't in love. You were entranced. That's why every breakup feels like a death, because it is. Not the death of a woman, but the collapse of an illusion you mistook for identity. You're not mourning her. You're mourning your own reflection. And until you face this, the pattern will repeat. You'll keep meeting new women with the same emotional blueprint. Exciting, unavailable, intense. You'll keep calling it chemistry, but it's not chemistry, it's compensation. You're trying to reclaim what you haven't dared to build within. Projection is always unconscious. You don't decide to do it. It happens because your psyche is incomplete and seeks balance outside itself. The feminine you crave in her, it's the anima in you calling to be owned, not chased. The moment you recognize this, everything changes. You stop chasing intensity and start cultivating intimacy with yourself. You stop confusing anxiety with passion and start choosing peace. You stop asking women to reflect your worth and start embodying it from within. This is the threshold of individuation. It's the point where projection ends and presence begins, where you no longer see her as savior, mother, or muse, but simply as another soul, walking her own path. Only then does love become possible. Only then does she become a person, not a symbol. Jung wrote, "What you love in another is what you lack in yourself." So if she made you feel alive, ask what part of your life you've been neglecting. If she made you feel whole, ask why you believed you were broken. If she made you feel powerful, ask when you stopped trusting your own strength. Don't run from the pain, follow it, because the woman you're grieving isn't her, it's the man you lost trying to win her. That man whole, clear, sovereign is waiting, not in her arms, but in your own silence, in your solitude, in the part of you that no longer needs to be completed, only reclaimed. When you find that man, women stop being your mirrors, they start being your equals. You weren't loving her, you were remembering yourself. Jung's final challenge: withdraw the projection, reclaim the soul. Carl Jung never wrote dating advice. He wasn't concerned with tactics to attract women. What he offered was far more brutal and far more liberating. His message was simple: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This is where most men collapse. They don't realize that what breaks them isn't women, it's the parts of themselves they refuse to confront. The feminine was never the danger. Their blindness to their own psyche was. When you project the anima onto women, you hand them the keys to your emotional life. You believe they can heal you, complete you, give you meaning, but you're not loving them. You're outsourcing your soul. And because projection is unconscious, it feels sacred. That's the trap. She validates you. Suddenly, you feel like a king. She withdraws, and you crumble. This isn't love, it's servitude to a symbol. And as long as you live in this fantasy, no woman can truly love you, not because she's incapable, but because you are unavailable, emotionally entangled, psychologically possessed. Jung called this archetypal possession. The man consumed by the anima doesn't lead, he pleads. He doesn't choose, he chases. He doesn't love, he clings. And what does that evoke in women? Pity, manipulation, or indifference, but never surrender, never devotion. Because how can she surrender to a man who has already surrendered to her image? Jung's answer was not to reject women, it was to reclaim the feminine from within, to see clearly, to withdraw the projection, to stop looking at her and start looking through her into yourself. That's the turning point. You see her mystery, explore your inner mystery. You admire her emotional depth, develop your own. You crave her presence, learn to sit with your own solitude. You don't abandon women, you stop abandoning yourself. This is individuation, the process of becoming whole. Not charming, not impressive, whole. And it is not poetic, it is painful. Because the spell doesn't break with insight, it breaks with grief. When you finally realize that all the women you've ever loved were just masks for the parts of yourself you never had the courage to claim. That's when the tears come. That's when the silence begins. That's when the boy dies. And that's when the man emerges. Not the man society rewards. Not the man women fantasize about. The man who walks through the world with clarity. The man who no longer begs for connection but radiates it. The man who no longer needs to chase because he chooses. To women still ruled by the animus, this man will seem distant, cold, even threatening, because he refuses to play the part they've scripted. He does not rescue, he does not orbit, he does not collapse under beauty, and in doing so, he forces them to confront their own unconscious. He becomes dangerous not because he harms, but because he cannot be used. His energy is not for sale. His love is not transactional. His presence is not bait. He has faced himself, and now he is free. This is Jung's dark truth. Women are not here to complete you. They are here to reflect what you've yet to own. So stop calling chaos chemistry. Stop calling pain passion. Stop confusing projection with spiritual connection. You weren't unlucky in love. You were unconscious in love. Now wake up. Take back your soul. Withdraw the fantasy. And walk through the fire alone until you're no longer a boy begging to be chosen, but a man who chooses himself. She was never the answer. She was the reflection. And the man. She was never the answer, only the mirror. Carl Jung didn't write dating advice. He didn't teach men how to attract women. What he offered was infinitely more powerful a path to reclaim the parts of your soul you've projected onto others. His warning was clear. If you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. For most men, that fate looks like heartbreak, confusion, and obsession, a cycle of chasing validation, collapsing under withdrawal, and calling it love. But as Jung showed us, this isn't romance, it's possession. It's the anima, your inner feminine, ruling you from the shadows, dragging you into relationships that reflect not love, but loss. You thought you were in love with her, but what you loved was yourself, the version of you she awakened, the part you hadn't owned. That's why when she left, it felt like death, because you weren't just losing her, you were losing the illusion that she completed you. And now comes the truth most men avoid. She was never the answer, she was the reflection, and the mirror only breaks when you finally stop chasing your healing in someone else's eyes. The chaos you've called chemistry, it's your unintegrated anima craving reunion. The silence you've mistaken for rejection, it's your soul urging you to sit with yourself. The heartbreak that haunts you, it's the grief of a boy who's been waiting for a man to claim him. And that man is you. You don't become him by studying red flags. You don't become him by mastering seduction. You become him when you finally do what no dating coach, no YouTube algorithm, no cultural script can do for you: the work of the soul. Shadow work, inner reclamation, spiritual integrity. You stop blaming women. You stop calling yourself unlucky. You stop orbiting beauty in hopes it will anoint you whole. And you start the descent into your fear, into your longing, into your own forgotten fire. When you reclaim your anima, when you see that she is not out there, but within you no longer seek wholeness, you embody it. And that's when everything changes. You no longer mistake lust for love. You no longer fall for projection and call it connection. You no longer perform to be loved, because now you know you are love. Not the sweet, sentimental kind, but the fierce, grounded presence that awakens others simply by existing. You become dangerous not because you manipulate or harm, but because you cannot be used. You do not flinch at withdrawal. You do not collapse under rejection. You do not beg for what should be offered freely. Your soul is no longer for sale. And to women who are still trapped in their own unconscious games, you are not charming, you are confronting. Because you won't play the rescuer, you won't play the fool, you won't dim your light to make them feel safer in the dark. You've seen yourself, you've forgiven yourself, and now you stand in a truth no one gave you, a truth you bled to find. This is Jung's dark truth about women. They are not here to complete you, they are here to confront you, to reflect the very parts of you you've never dared to claim. And until you stop idolizing them, fearing them, chasing them, you will never truly love them. So the next time you find yourself chasing her, craving her, collapsing over her paws, ask not why did she leave? Ask, what part of me did she awaken? Then go to that place, sit with it, reclaim it. And when you rise, because you will no longer look for a woman to save you. You will look for a woman who sees you, and she will only appear when you've learned to see yourself. She was never the destination. She was the mirror. And once the mirror shattered, you finally saw the man you were meant to become.